Okay, good morning and happy Monday. We're going to pick up where we left off on Friday, talking about illegal drugs and legal drugs that are on the schedule, and kind of break it down because we talked more about Schedule 1 being illegal drugs, and then we talked about Schedule 2 through 5 being controlled substances, these four categories. So we're going to break these four categories down today. So you're going to want to jot these down because when you probably already saw when you were answering your questions last week in your notes, you're going to be having to say, what is a stimulant, and give a couple examples. What is a narcotic? Some examples. Some of you guys, when I was grading the questions, just listed examples, but you didn't list a definition when it asked what it was. So you need to go back and fix those. I tried to put notes on your notes or answers if they weren't quite right. Some of you, I can tell, are just Googling your answers. If you want to do that, don't be upset when it comes time to take a test and your answers don't match the answers that I'm putting on the test, because I always put on the test exactly what I've told you in class, exactly what's on the slides, what's in your book, and what's in your notes. So if you choose to not watch the videos and just Google answers and do poorly, that's your choice. But just like when we're in class, I give you all the information very simply and laid out in class. All you got to do is jot it down. So I did return the graded, it was a completion grade, but I did make some notes. If it wasn't completed, I didn't give you 100. So you'll notice some of you got back like a 50 or a 35 if you only answered the first 3 questions. You had all week to answer 10 questions. So get it done, guys. This week you're going to have the last of the questions to finish. Okay. And it'll be due by the end of the day on Wednesday because it would have been done in class. So today we're going to look at these 4 categories, jot them down. Actually, there's one more. We'll talk about alcohol. So it's 5 categories. You'll go back and answer those 5 questions today. I would do it today because if we were physically in class, you would be doing it in class today. And then tomorrow, you've got an interactive activity that I'd like you to do. Wednesday, we'll finish answering the notes questions, and then you'll pretty much be have a nice long Easter weekend break. So don't get behind anymore, those of you who are already behind. Okay, so let's start with stimulants. So you want to, when it says what is a stimulant, okay, you want to make sure you're answering that it's something, a drug that increases feelings of energy and alertness. It does suppress your appetite. And then afterwards, a lot of times people will just kind of crash and go into like a depressive mode after stimulant. So you want to, when you're describing these drugs, what do they do to your body? They increase your energy, alertness. They make you not be hungry for a while, but then you can kind of crash. So when somebody is overdosing on stimulants, it's usually that their blood pressure can get really high, or they get agitated, confused. Seizures are common reactions. And then stimulants can be really addictive, as most of these drugs can be. But examples can be, everything from, we think of caffeine as a stimulant, and it is. Okay, it wakes us up, it gives us energy, it helps us be more alert, and then later we're like, we kind of like crash. But when it comes to, something more powerful than caffeine, it can be an amphetamine, such as speed. It can be cocaine, crack cocaine, methamphetamines. Those are the different drugs that fall into that category as an example of a stimulant. So you're going to want to make sure you know what it does to your body and some examples. So I do have a little video I'm going to show. So earlier or last week when I played some videos, the sound wasn't that great. So if the sound isn't great on this, I'll go back and play this afterwards and make sure the sound worked. If the sound didn't work, sorry, go back here. If the sound didn't work, then I will just post links to these videos below my video. So you can just kind of fast forward through the videos if the sound is bad, but I got to give it a try. So this is just a minute and a half about a young boy who basically, well, I'm not going to tell you. Y'all can just watch and listen. Let's see if I got to.
Collapsed and died last month. Medical teams
Okay, so pretty sad story there. To start over. Sorry. Sorry, I'm struggling here. Okay, I'm just going to close out of this so it won't auto start again. So it just, I hope that you guys could hear it. If not, I will again post a link to it. But caffeine's a natural stimulant, and I know I drink a ton of coffee, but you guys, it's just kind of a beware of what you're putting in your body. I think we're kind of not irresistible. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word. That nothing can happen to you, right? Invincible. Thank you. But just be really careful about what you're putting in your body, because it's just a 16-year-old kid who just drank a ton of caffeine, and maybe he had some kind of underlying heart issue and he didn't know about it. Let's see here. So then let's go on to our next category here, narcotics. So narcotics is kind of an interesting word because it can be, I'll get to the note at the bottom in a minute. Basically, what is a narcotic? It's a drug that's meant to sedate or induce sleep. Okay, so it's really meant to kind of just really slow everything down. In less potent forms of narcotics, it can be used as a pain reliever or like a muscle relaxer, or a sedative. So it's really, whereas the stimulants are ramping everything up in your body, a narcotic is something that's really relaxing your body and kind of slowing things down. Some of the different examples are, the more common ones are like oxycodone. That's a really abused and addictive painkiller. Codeine, that's more mild. You might get a prescription for like Tylenol with codeine if you've had surgery or something like that, because it's stronger than Tylenol. It's enough to really help take the edge off, but it's not quite as potent. Opium, heroin, morphine. Morphine's a much more powerful pain reliever. Usually, if someone's been in the hospital and they're in excruciating pain, the doctors will give them morphine. So what I was mentioning about narcotics earlier is that we think of narcotics as illegal drugs because a lot of law enforcement agencies will have a narcotics unit. And they're the ones who deal with the drugs. And so we just assume all narcotics are illegal, because it just kind of has that, well, if they have a narcotics unit, it must be all the bad stuff. But it's really not. This kind of explains down here. Instead, some of these drugs, such as cocaine, methamphetamines, are actually stimulants. Okay, whereas a narcotic, again, is something that kind of brings things down. But despite the improper use of the word narcotics that you hear sometimes in law enforcement or in movies or TV or things like that, it's often applied to illegal drugs. But that doesn't mean all narcotics are illegal. I don't know if that makes sense. So just want you to be aware of that if you see is in like a TV show or in law enforcement. Prince, we talked very briefly when we were talking about accidental overdoses. We looked at the case of Prince overdosing, and he actually overdosed to a narcotic called fentanyl. And the toxicology test for Prince concluded that the entertainer died from an accidental overdose of the opioid fentanyl. It's prescribed by doctors a lot of times for cancer treatment because it's great for pain. Excuse me. But it's become such a problem in the last 10 years, or probably 5 to 10 years. Lots of accidental overdoses on fentanyl and addictions to it. It is 25 to 50 times more potent than heroin and 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. So it is some serious stuff. And so it has caused a lot of addictions. So I have a little video on Prince, but I'll just attach it at the end that you can watch. It's just a couple of minutes about what happened at the scene when he died, if you'd like to watch a little bit more about that, just to keep this video from going too long. So depressants is our next category. Depressants are drugs that relieve anxiety and produce sleep. So even more than a narcotic, these are really going to induce sleep even more because they're usually going to be they are very highly addictive, but they slow down your body functions even more, including your heart and your breathing rate, and so they can slur your speech. You can lose your coordination. It can lead to coma and death if it's mixed with alcohol. So really, really dangerous. This is just a picture up here of a bunch of different examples of barbiturates, which is a lot of sleeping pills. So depressants, they slow everything down. They help you relax. They make you sleepy. Sleeping pills fall into the category of depressants. So does alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. It slows things down, okay, in your body, your heart rate. And so mixing depressants with other things, so mixing alcohol with other drugs can lead to heart attacks. Tranquilizers are also another thing in that category. So you've got barbiturates, which are sleeping pills, benzodiazepine, which is tranquilizers, and alcohol would be examples of depressants. So make sure that you know that depressants are drugs that relieve anxiety and produce sleep, highly addictive, slow down the body functions, including your heart rate and your breathing, and have some examples of that. So this is a crazy picture. I'm pretty sure this one's photoshopped, but these look pretty real. I don't think that's a real person, but it's just a fun picture. So anabolic steroids is another category of the Schedule 2 through 5 drugs, which are legal drugs, but they are controlled substances. Remember, we talked about controlled substances are controlled by the Controlled Substance Act. You have to have a prescription. They have to be used in a certain way. You can't just go buy them. Oops, my dogs are barking. So knowing what anabolic steroids do, they actually promote cell and tissue growth. They're actually were created for good things. They have a chemical structure similar to testosterone. So they've been used in people with delayed puberty, or people with low testosterone, or impotence, or muscle wasting due to HIV, where their muscles waste away and they need more steroids to help regain some of that muscle loss. But they've also been abused by athletes, as you guys have heard of that, I'm sure. There are a lot of negative side effects other than, just some physical side effects like acne and increased body hair and baldness, and impotence is also one. You can also get some people who use steroids regularly and have an increased aggression. They become really angry and kind of violent, and their cholesterol levels can be off the chart. I think I already mentioned impaired fertility in males, blood clotting, kidney and liver cancers, heart attacks. It's not stuff to mess around with. So just be aware. I don't think I asked you to list any examples of steroids, but just know what they do, that they do promote cell and tissue growth and division, and they're used for what it's used for, like delayed puberty, impotence, muscle wasting. And just be familiar with the fact that it's been abused by athletes. And so this also is another video that I'll just link at the end on it separately. And it's about Jose Canseco. It's a really long video, but I usually, not really long, it's like 12 minutes, but I usually only show the first 2 or 3 minutes to my classes each year. So it just gives you a little bit of a background of basically he was this famous baseball player, and he already was a good baseball player, but he was very heavily using steroids. And then he wrote this book called Juiced. And he basically said, yes, I was using steroids, but so was this guy, and so was this guy, and so was this guy. And he basically called out all these major league baseball players, and then everybody hated him, and it was just terrible. So, but anyway, I'm not quite sure. Maybe some of you baseball players can tell me what is the status of steroid use in the major leagues today. Is it under control now? What's the deal? I'd love to know. Some of you baseball guys know a lot more about this than I do, but just kind of that thought of, what do you think about the use of steroids in athletes? Do you think athletes should be able to use performance enhancing drugs, or they should compete on their own skill level that they've put their own hard work into? So just something interesting that if we could get a chance to do kind of a Zoom call before we test over this, that we can address that question. Or if you want to put it in the notes, not notes, in the comments below this lesson, you're welcome to do that too. And then the last topic for today is alcohol. It is a nervous system. It is another depressant. It's a central nervous system depressant. So it falls under depressants, but we want to talk about it separately. In overdose amounts, it can destroy your nerve cells, and it can even kill you. People can die from alcohol poisoning. Alcohol is not something to mess around with. Yeah, I mean, basically, how it affects you is going to be based on, have you eaten, so the food in your stomach, how much you weigh, what is your individual tolerance. So some person, one person may be able to, have a couple of beers and be fine, and somebody else could have a couple of beers and be deathly ill. So it can be very dangerous. Obviously, it's illegal for you guys right now, and you just need to be aware of the dangers of it. And most of the time, the accidental overdoses are people mixing alcohol and drugs, especially teens. So this is a serious, serious thing. So I want to leave you with this verse, 2 verses, to think about. And the first one is from Ephesians. It says, "Do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit." And the second verse is from 1 Peter. And it says, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour." And so I usually always share those verses at the end of this topic because, not most, I shouldn't assume that, but many teens and young adults can get caught up in drinking heavily when they go to college or maybe even in high school. And it's a really dangerous thing to get caught up in. And so I like to just kind of have you think, why do you think God would say, don't get drunk on wine or be sober minded? Like, why do you think he puts that out there for us? And usually when God is giving us some kind of a command, it's because it's for our own good. And so just be mindful of the fact that when your parents encourage you not to drink, and your teachers encourage you not to drink, and God has encouraged you not to drink in excess, it's usually for your own good. So just usually this is a great discussion in class, and we're not in class. I'm hoping that we can do a Zoom meeting before we test over this and get some discussion on this. So kind of be thinking about that and be thinking how you might respond. Okay, so make sure you go back, and I think it's questions 12 through 16 that you need to take care of. And oh yeah, this is something if I can get it to work again, we might do it, but I think the link doesn't work anymore. But anyway, get your questions done today on Monday, because you would have been writing them down had you been in class. Hopefully you wrote them down while we were talking. Just go type them in and be done. And let me know if you'll have any questions. All right. See you later. Bye.